And so I wouldn't be surprised if the crypto community starts reaching out to Vice President Harris and starts donating to her if she shows any signs of being accepting of this technology. Mark Cuban, obviously, huge proponent of this technology and has been a Democratic fundraiser. So I think the money will start to come in for her from the crypto community, and hopefully that does sway her position.
This content is brought to you by VeChain, which is a leading enterprise-grade Layer 1 public blockchain spearheading a digital revolution from a sustainable, highly scalable smart contract platform. The VeChain blockchain has many unique features, which makes it an ideal choice for Web3 applications. VeChain is working with many great enterprises such as PwC, Givenchy, BMW, and Walmart China. Most recently, they partnered with the Boston Consulting Group to build a revolutionary decentralized application ecosystem. I'm a big believer in this project. I have been since 2018. I've been a VET token holder for years. And this blockchain is highly scalable, great with security and speed, and it has low energy consumption. If you'd like to learn more about VeChain, please visit vchain.org. Link will be in the description. Welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Tony Edward, and with me is Cody Carbone, who's the Chief Policy Officer at the Digital Chamber. Cody, great to see you.
Tony, great to see you as always.
Cody, there's so much happening with crypto and politics in DC. There's so much to talk about. Let's start with Biden dropping out of the presidential election race. He's not seeking re-election. What impact does this have on Elizabeth Warren's anti-crypto army campaign, as well as Gary Gensler's enforcement actions against crypto?
Tony, the news never stops. It's just like we don't get a break. It's a lot. So, with President Biden saying, hey, I'm not going to run for re-election, I see this as an opportunity for the Democratic Party to really say, hey, let's rethink our position on digital assets and cryptocurrency. We don't need to be this hostile. And though Elizabeth Warren and Gary Gensler have been the tip of that spear, and they've been the most vocal opponents to cryptocurrency, they don't need to be the powers within the party anymore. And so I'm hopeful now that we have candidates vying for the top of the ticket. And I know we'll talk about it, but it really seems like it's going to be one candidate at the top of the ticket for the Democratic Party and Vice President Harris. I think it's an opportunity for the entire Democratic Party to reset their position on innovation and cryptocurrency specifically. And so I'm hopeful, and I've already talked to members of Congress in the 48 hours since Biden has said I'm dropping out, saying this is an opportunity for us to educate Vice President Harris, to educate her circle, that hopefully coming from California and Silicon Valley and having deep-rooted relationships there, that she could be more forward-thinking and lean into this technology. And hopefully she just has different advisors, that it won't be her relying on Gary Gensler and Elizabeth Warren. It'll be her relying on more innovative voices within the party. And I think it's a real opportunity, again, for the entire party to say, you know what, enough is enough. We've been so hostile for so long. It doesn't need to be this way. It doesn't need to be partisan. We're going to reset and we're going to listen to other voices, because listening to Gary Gensler and Elizabeth Warren has not done them any favors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw a clip of Congressman Wally Nickel, a Democrat, yesterday being interviewed saying the same thing you're saying, that he's looking to reset the Democrats' policy on crypto with Kamala Harris. On that note, you and the folks at the chamber sent a letter to the Vice President Kamala Harris about these things. What can you tell us there? Have you gotten any responses as yet, and so forth?
We moved quickly because, again, I think there is an opportunity here. This doesn't need to be partisan. And this was not, I think I saw a lot of commentary online that people thought we were endorsing her. Not by any means. We wanted to write her a letter as that she is going to be the new face of the party. And again, she's going to be leading the top of the ticket for the Democratic Party, and say, this is your opportunity to change the perception of the Democratic Party as it relates to digital assets and blockchain technology. We asked three things for her. We asked for her to put pro-digital asset rhetoric within and policies within the party platform, like Republicans did under former President Donald Trump. We asked for her to select a vice presidential candidate who is pro-digital assets, pro-blockchain, someone who is sophisticated on this, that has a history of moving pro-crypto policies in the past, like Colorado Governor Jared Polis as our plug, personal for there. And then we asked her to start having conversations with the industry. Vice President Harris, for her long public service record, whether it was as a federal prosecutor or U.S. senator or now as vice president, has said almost zero as it relates to digital assets. She is a complete blank slate if I've ever seen one, which is surprising from having her deep-rooted connections with Silicon Valley and California. So it's a real opportunity for her to show that she's going to embrace this technology, that she is going to listen to industry leaders, that she really wants to move this technology forward and put it within the party platform. We wanted to take this opportunity first to ask her to do this and to say, hey, we're here to serve as a resource for you, that the Digital Chamber and our 200 member companies who are boots on the ground trying to move this technology forward. We have a history of educating policymakers on this technology. We want to be here for you to make sure that you're educated so that we can move policies forward.
Yeah, to your point, she's a bit of a blank slate. We haven't heard any type of positive or negative or any type of comments. So certainly an opportunity, and hopefully she can do that. And, to your point, Lev, we're not trying to endorse any specific candidate, but rather just get the United States on the same page and not make this thing partisan. Like, it's a technology. It shouldn't.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense. And I will be the first to tell you, I am elated that former President Trump and the Republican Party has embraced this technology. And I will be just as elated if Vice President Harris and the Democratic Party embraces this technology. Every single American politician, whether, again, you're running for president or senator or a U.S. school board in your local county, you should embrace digital assets and blockchain technology because it is solving for problems that have existed and persisted for so long. And so it only makes sense for both parties to embrace this technology. It should not be partisan. And so I'm very hopeful that Vice President Harris will heed our call and listen to us. I have received confirmation that she has been in receipt of the letter. So that's a great positive first step. Now will she take the next step and reach out to industry leaders, whether it's the chamber or someone else? I don't care. But if she's willing to be educated on this, it's a great sign.
Cody, money is a great motivator. And we know the crypto industry has built a war chest, I think over $160 million with Fair Shake. That is, of course, supporting pro-crypto candidates and attacking those who are anti-crypto. We saw some of it on Super Tuesday and in the primaries. So do you think that's going to be a motivator too? Given I think, if I'm not mistaken, I heard somebody say that's the largest hack right now as far as politics.
Yeah, it'd be naive to say it wasn't a motivator. I mean, money drives the day when it comes to politics. It's how you influence races, and crypto being able to show its political muscle and get involved in the political fundraising game is massive for this industry's staying power and really shows how quickly we've matured as an industry. No, I know there are very large Democratic donors. The Democrats usually have a better time raising money in races than Republicans. And Kamala Harris has been one of the best fundraisers in the entire party. I think she had a record for how much she raised in 24 hours since she announced that she was going to run for president. And so I wouldn't be surprised if large crypto donors get involved and start reaching out to her. I think there was a fascinating study that came out yesterday from Troy Cross in the Bitcoin community that showed the level of adoption across the political spectrum, and those who identify as very liberal was almost as much, if not more, as those who identify as very conservative and those that adopt Bitcoin. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the crypto community starts reaching out to Vice President Harris and starts donating to her if she shows any signs of being accepting of this technology. Mark Cuban, obviously, huge proponent of this technology and has been a Democratic fundraiser. So I think the money will start to come in for her from the crypto community, and hopefully that does sway her position.
Yeah, and on that note with Mark Cuban, we had the crypto roundtable held by Congressman Ro Khanna. I think it was last week, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And were there any major takeaways from that, or was it kind of closed door and we don't know all the details?
Fairly closed door. I know that they have created a plan of action. I believe it's a 6-point plan of action that is coming out of that roundtable for how Democrats can get more involved in this technology, how we can continue to educate the party on this technology. And so I think a lot of work still needs to be done. I think there were some surprises coming out of that roundtable, I think from the administration and to the industry's perception of how hostile the administration has been to the technology. I think there were some surprises from the White House to hear how hostile the SEC specifically has been, which I know to you and me and to a lot of the folks listening to this, that's no surprise. And we've been banging this drum for years now on how hostile and impartial Gary Gensler is. But it's a good first step. A lot more has to be done. There needs to be a lot more roundtables and candid conversations like that throughout the Democratic Party. There needs to be a lot more within the administration, Vice President Harris, and a lot more just within Congress. There are still a lot of Democrats who are hostile to this technology, whether it's because they share Elizabeth Warren's political ethos that government is the great equalizer and this is a threat to government, because it is a technology that grew up outside of government control. That may be, but I think the more conversations we have, I'm confident that the more folks we're able to flip over to our side, that the light bulb goes off and they say, okay, this makes sense. And again, there's no reason this should be partisan.
Absolutely. Now, regarding the SEC, something interesting has happened over the past month or so. They dropped their investigation against Ethereum via consensus and so forth. They dropped their case against Stacks, the layer 2 for Bitcoin, and Binance stablecoin BUSD. So are we seeing some sort of capitulation here, given the political pressure and all the fallout with Biden and all these things?
It's a steady drip. They're just losing. Like it's as simple as that. They're losing in every facet of the war on crypto, their own self-built, self-created war on crypto. They're losing in the courts. And so we had a great decision from Judge Jackson in the DC District Court as it relates to the Binance case on secondary trading. They're losing in the Ripple case, as we know from last year. They're losing in in public opinion. And so that pressure is building with every loss that they take and every hit that they take. And as this technology continues to grow and more industry players traditional financial industry players accept this technology, like BlackRock, like Fidelity, as the Bitcoin ETFs continue to thrive, and all of these threats that Gary Gensler and SEC Commissioner Caroline Crenshaw warned of, no one's seen any of them. As this political pressure keeps mounting, as they keep taking loss after loss in the courts, I think they're just realizing we don't have the arguments on our side anymore. And that these arguments that we have feigned for so long through these enforcement actions, we realize they're not going to fly. And at some point, you have to take a look in the mirror and say, I'm not going to waste taxpayer dollars anymore by trotting out my enforcement staff to keep fighting these fights that they cannot win. It's a waste of resources. It's a waste of people's time. And I think it's fantastic that they're finally capitulating, that they're finally dropping some of these actions. Will that continue? I hope so. I think there's a lot more that they can drop, and it's fantastic to see, but maybe Gary Gensler won't be there too much longer, which I know we'll talk about in a bit, but it's a good sign. But I just think all I see it as, the facts have been on our side for a long time. And now those chickens are coming home to roost for the SEC, and they realize that they don't have the winning side.
So speaking of Gary Gensler, some different folks are speculating he might be out in February 2025, which seems like the natural progress, because I don't know if Kamala Harris is going to win the election. I don't know if Donald Trump is going to win, but let's say Donald Trump wins. We know Gary's out anyway. Mm-hmm. But, with all the failures and the court of public opinion, the SEC is at an all-time low, and Gary Gensler is at an all-time low. He's going to have to leave. It just seems like this can't continue. What are you hearing on that front?
I wouldn't be surprised if he left in February 2025, if not sooner. I imagine, as you said, if former President Trump wins, there's no way he stays, in my view. Technically, he could stay as a commissioner, or I believe his term is not up until 2026, but he will no longer be chairman. And so do you really want that demotion when you've been chair this entire time at the SEC? If Vice President Harris wins, I wouldn't be surprised if she wanted to put in her own people. Gary Gensler is not a popular figure. I would be surprised if Gary Gensler could even move through another confirmation process, especially with what's looking like today, as polls are showing that Republicans are likely to take over the Senate. And so if the Senate's in Republican hands and they really have the power to confirm all of Vice President Harris's nominees, if she is to win, Gary Gensler just seems like the wrong pick. And so I wouldn't be surprised if she comes in and she cleans house of her own and puts her own people there. And so I think either way, whatever happens in November in terms of the presidential election, Gary Gensler will be gone shortly within 2025.
Now, let's say Donald Trump wins. I've heard some people say, keep an eye on Mark Ueda, commissioner currently at the SEC, that he could become chair, or maybe they bring in someone from the outside, maybe Brian Brooks or something like that. Anything you can share there?
I would take a look at either Republican commissioner right now. I think Commissioner Ueda and Commissioner Peirce would be fantastic picks to be chair of the SEC. I would also take a look at Chris Giancarlo, who I believe you've had on the show before. Former CFTC chair, has a extensive markets background and securities background. He has been a champion for the Trump administration. I believe at our DC blockchain summit, he was one of the first officials to come out and endorse Donald Trump as the crypto president. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that his name is being floated around as the next SEC chairman, kind of following Gary Gensler's path of going from the CFTC chair to the SEC chair. Brian Brooks would be a great pick, whether it was at SEC or for one of the prudential regulators like OCC or FDIC. But I would really look within the Republican commissioners right now, as you said, Ueda and Peirce, and then there's some other names floating.
Yeah, I asked Hester Peirce at I think it was the DC blockchain summit that you guys hosted. And she's like, no, but I don't know if, she's just saying that right now.
Yeah.
She's like, no, I want to go garden after this or something.
Yeah.
But, she can always change her mind. But Chris Giancarlo would be fascinating because he absolutely has so much experience at the, putting stuff together for crypto at the CFTC, and he absolutely gets it. So that would be pretty cool.
Crypto dad.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Now let's talk Donald Trump. Bitcoin 2024 conference in Nashville. There's rumors he's going to present a plan to potentially make Bitcoin a U.S. Treasury reserve asset. What are you hearing about that?
I've heard the same thing. I believe that there will also be legislation that will be introduced very shortly that would call for the establishment of a strategic Bitcoin reserve when the U.S. government. And so I believe Donald Trump is fully embraced the technology. From every speech I've heard from him over the last 6 months, he gets it. He's got great advisors. And so I am hearing that there will be a full detailed policy plan revealed on Saturday at the Bitcoin conference to how his administration will ensure that the U.S. leads on Bitcoin. So I have heard the strategic reserve side of it, and I do believe that will be part of the plan. And there will be legislation on that. But I'm also hearing some other things as it relates to how Bitcoin will be taxed, how it is treated as an asset, and how Bitcoin miners are treated in the United States.
Wow. Cody, I wish it was Saturday morning.
Wild.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm waiting in anticipation for that because that is fascinating. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I heard you say that outside of Donald Trump, that there's going to be a proposal from the U.S. government around this.
There will be a proposal from the U.S. Senate around this coming very soon as possibly this week. So I would stay tuned to the Bitcoin conference. But yes, we are likely to see legislation that will introduce a strategic reserve for Bitcoin.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's mind blowing. On that note, folks are curious about what happens next with the FIT21 bill. Has there been any movement? I know it's election season and all that. Or are we pretty much waiting for 2025?
So the market structure bills, or market structure activity, I should say, has been very active in the U.S. Senate. And so after FIT21 passed, I think senators who are interested in this topic said, okay, I need to take a look at this because I'm shocked that it passed with that much bipartisan support. And so you really have a few distinct efforts at play here. You've had the Senate Agriculture Committee, led by Chairwoman Debbie Stabenow, come out with her own proposal. And so that is being worked on right now, that the industry is providing feedback on, and she would like to mark up that proposal next week. But that only will touch the CFTC portions. That will only touch digital commodities. So that is the Digital Commodities Act. And so what is she doing now is she's working with Lummis-Gillibrand, who have had their Lummis-Gillibrand bill, the Responsible Financial Innovation Act, for so long, to see if they can bring parts of their bill that touch on the security side of things and make one bill. And again, their goal is to mark that up next week. So it doesn't look exactly like FIT21, but they're hopeful that they can pass their own version of a market structure bill. And then in September, September ahead of the election before October recess, they're hoping that they can conference with the House on FIT21. The other effort at play is a Republican-only effort that's being led by Vice President candidate JD Vance. So JD Vance took FIT21 and he said, how can I improve this for the crypto industry? And so he's been reaching out to industry leaders to see if they can use FIT21 as a baseline text and start adding some more industry-friendly proposals, or to amend it to remove some of the industry not so friendly proposals. And so he has got that effort out there that he is hopeful that he can get the entire Republican Party to support and use that really as the Republican position going into 2025, and then bring Democrats to the negotiating table. And so there's a lot happening in the U.S. Senate. But I think, Tony, you said it best, it's an election year, and there's not a lot of time left on the legislative calendar. We have the rest of this week and next week, August recess, 2.5 weeks in September, and then they're gone all of October, and it's the election. And so there's really only like 3.5 weeks left to get something done before the election. So it would be very, very tough. And I do think this is more likely a 2025 effort.
Now, a quick follow-up question on JD Vance. Do you think Trump selected him because of his pedigree with tech, investing, also crypto? He's been a very vocal advocate of crypto. He's also criticized Gary Gensler many times.
Yep. I don't think it's the only reason. I think it's one of a litany of reasons. I think probably the biggest reason why they selected JD Vance is that he's a Midwestern guy. This election is going to be won in the Midwest. It's really going to come down to, as I believe the Trump campaign is seeing it, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. That's where JD Vance is from. And from what I've heard is that he's going to be parked there over the next 3 months before the election and just be hitting all of those states, talking to the people that he grew up with, to get the support for the Trump campaign in those states. And so I think that's probably the main reason. He's also a young, fresh face to the party. I am a fan of Hillbilly Elegy. I read that book. I've watched that movie. My wife watched that movie this weekend. It's a great story. He's got an incredible background. It is a huge boost to the crypto industry that he's a fan of the industry, that he has a tech background, that he has worked with, tech entrepreneurs and crypto entrepreneurs for many years before he was a U.S. Senator, and that since coming to the U.S. Senate, he's embraced this technology. Huge boon, but it was a great pick, and I fully support the pick.
Cody, man, like I said, I wish it was Saturday morning. I can't wait.
I know. At 2 p.m. Central Time, Saturday is when Donald Trump will get on stage. And so I'm sure everyone will be watching who's listening to this podcast then.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do a live stream or something. It's going to be exciting times. Cody, always great insights, my friend. Thank you so much.
I love being with you, Tony. Thanks for having me again.